Hi, I am Andy Clements. This is my first time here, loving it. Feel safer than most places I have ever presented, especially when we go through this topic. So I just emailed a colleague and he said, just don't get on any hit lists. So that lets you know where we're going. But what I'll give you the short skinny of it. I'm trying to solve addiction. Okay, the rest will be couched in that. But I am I'm not an assistant professor, I'm a full professor. I've been there 30 years. Full professor at East Tennessee State University in the psychology department. And I also work with the Strong Brain Institute, which does work in adverse childhood experiences, trauma, et cetera, and so forth. And I also am president of a nonprofit that is trying to mobilize faith communities to address addiction. So you're beginning to kind of see where this is going. All right, so my big theoretical picture is, I'm going to give that first, and then I'll work toward my personal motivation for grappling with this topic. The big theoretical picture is peer review. And peer review, I'm a believer, I'm an old school, if it works, it works. And I'm going to talk a little bit about peer review in publication and also peer review in funding. And so if we have peer review in publication, the ideal is that it's going to ensure that truth resulting from good science is disseminated and incorrect information is identified and prevented from dissemination. That, I think most of us probably agree on that. Same in funding, peer review should help ensure that studies are funded that offer the chance to find truth through valid scientific study. So that's where I'm coming from. This is my ideal. I believe in it. I think it should happen. And so the thing that we assume, though, in that is that editors, reviewers, publishers, and funders, and authors value the truth resulting from good science above other competing interests. But what if there is bias? That's my thing, is what if there are those competing interests? And most of the talks that I've been to since I've been here have been more around political, ideological kinds of ideas and so forth. I'm going to talk more economic in this one, but I think the issues can be similar. So what if there are some competing interests that are outweighing maybe perhaps the pure love of science and purity of science? And so Tavina in 2019 described 3 types of bias. I'm sure there are many, many more. Not a philosopher, psychologist, but 3 types of bias. One is the ad hominem bias, where it's because of who you are that maybe somebody's jealous and they don't want you to publish. Maybe somebody loves you and they want to publish stuff even if it's garbage. Just because of some sort of who you are is what is helping you to be given a pass or whatever. There's affiliation bias, where you come from. You're from a Ivy League school, and of course we want to publish these famous people. Or you come from East Tennessee State University. That does not get me far a lot of places. I have to actually do good science because nobody knows where we are. We are in the beautiful mountains of Appalachia. If you want to ever come visit, it's great. There's ideological bias, and that's when and those first 2 I'll say, blinding helps that. Because if you don't know who the person is or you don't know where they're from, you're more apt to look just strictly at the science. Then there's ideological bias, and that is what worries me most and kind of what I'm going to land on here. And so if you've got a reviewer that has strong views against the author's position, if the reviewer can set that aside and view competing opinions objectively and value methodology, science, and so forth, and the support for it, then that's fine. The peer review system can still work. But if they can't, then gatekeeping may happen. Blinding doesn't help with this. If it's the idea, you don't care who it is or where it's from. If you hate it, you hate it. And so you might want to keep it from getting out there. There are, most journals will ask for conflict of interest statements and so forth. From the author, at least, typically that is more financial than it is ideological. But also, I don't know that I have ever, I guess I've been asked for conflict of interest with the author before when I've been reviewing, but not about the idea of the article. Not explicitly, that's not the way I've interpreted it before when I've reviewed. There are maybe a little more when you're looking at funding reviewers, if you have competing interests and so forth. But still, there's much more emphasis on the financial than there is on actual just hating someone's idea. And you can hate an idea that's wrong, that's fine, and then find the chinks in it and so forth. So what I want to do today is I want to talk about 2 case studies. So this is not just like an arbitrary exercise that I came up with. This is like I've been living with this, and I want to talk to people that might understand and feel sorry for me. But I'm going to give 2 case studies. The first one is going to be having to do, and this is a colleague of mine, this is not mine, a colleague of mine who studies tapering of buprenorphine, in pregnant women to reduce neonatal abstinence syndrome. So he's a research obstetrician who runs a medication clinic for pregnant women. And I don't know how much you know about this, that you might not be in this world, but in 2012, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists came out with a committee opinion on opioid use and opioid use disorder in pregnancy, and which stated, this was again 2012, that stated that you should maintain women on medication, too dangerous to take them off. Then in the mid-teens, a really strong article came out of the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. I guess that is the University of Tennessee, but we say it that way, that other institution, that you could taper women and it was not dangerous to the babies or the moms, and that original opinion didn't really have any research articles behind it. It had a couple of opinion articles, but not research articles, more anecdotal stuff. And so this article came out that showed it actually is safer and babies are less likely to have neonatal abstinence syndrome. And so then taking that into consideration, ACOG then re-upped on their status quo position 5 years later, in 2021, saying, no, we still think that you should use medication in spite of that research. So this is kind of the groundwork for where this professor that I work with was coming from. And so he took the mantle and has continued doing like really elegant empirical science with not randomized, I won't say randomized, women who they could choose to taper or not taper, but over multiple cases in like 2 or 3 studies has found that the women that chose to taper to 2 milligrams or less, none of the babies had NAS. And let me say, in our region where I'm from, I am from Central Appalachia, in our region, about 10% of babies have NAS. Like of all the babies born, about 10%. About 90% of those are from prescribed buprenorphine. So people say, oh, we need to stop this. It's like, well, we know how to stop it. We're just not stopping it, And so there's this tension there. And so, but what I want to say is, love the science, love what he's doing, love the moms and babies that are being benefited by it. But a couple of years ago, he was slated, and I don't know if the fellow that was in the session yesterday that said, I'm going to get to present finally to my professional organization. I don't think he's here. And I said, I hope you get to, because this fellow was accepted to present this research a couple years ago at ACOG, got called the weekend before and said, we've decided to pull your paper because it differs with our opinion. That was the only reason given. But it's like, it's science, and what it would do is undermine that opinion or offer an alternative to that opinion. And so he kind of went on the circuit. We have our nonprofit has a podcast. He's been on the podcast. He said, anywhere you can get anyone to let me present this research, I will present it. So he's just kind of gone off on his own and presented it. Place. He did get it published, which is fantastic. Anyway, so that's one of the cases. And I think, I will say, we also, I'm from, ETSU is in Johnson City, Tennessee, and it's probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, there was a census of the highest rate of buprenorphine prescribing, and of the top 10 clinics in the United States, 3 were in Johnson City. So this is our economy there. So I think there's some economic pressures on this, but I'm just going to leave that there. And that is why I was told don't get a hit on you. But I just wear Targets on everything I wear. Okay, so that was kind of a setup for the current study, and that was one very staunch evidence piece. But what I've been trying to do over the last probably 6 years is try to get an article published, try to get funding or an article published or both. And what we're trying to investigate is human connection as an alternative treatment for addiction to medication. So intensive social support, basically. And so we have at my university, we have an addiction science center. I am not affiliated with the Addiction Science Center because they don't want to play ball with me because I want to do something besides medication, and they won't collaborate with anyone who doesn't use medication in a study. So it's like, we don't want to study the alternatives. Like, okay, well, I'll just go do my own thing over here. So that's what I've been doing for a while. But one of the things that has happened in trying to get funding for this type of research is that most of the funding calls require medication. It's like, and now I have to look at the name of the organization. Yeah, I don't have it yet. I'll get to it. Oh, there it is. The National Opioid Response Network, which is a SAMHSA-funded program of the American Addiction Psychiatry Association, now is training people that it is unethical not to provide. Like it's a breach of ethics not to recommend medication and put people on medication. And so that makes it very hard to fund alternatives. Like, oh, you're being unethical by doing your study this way, therefore you can't do the study this way. So that's sort of the groundwork for where we are. But this article that we're trying to publish, and still are trying to publish, started out in 2021. 2021. I was special editor for a special issue in Frontiers, and it was Human Connection as Treatment for Addiction. And so we were trying to use this one article to lay the groundwork for the rest of the issue. And so it took a year to have it reviewed, because what we were trying to do is look at a biopsychosocial spiritual model. So we had the theology overlaying the other concepts. And so some of the reviewers struggled with the theology, some of the reviewers struggled with whatever. But finally we went back and forth for a year. And it's like, yes, this is ready to go to publication. And it was going to be in the special issue and so forth. They had brought in a special editor for this article. Everybody was on the same page. It went to the next level, and they said, nah, never mind, we don't want to publish it. So it still didn't get published. The special issue went on, absent that. And so it's like, okay, well, we'll take the spiritual part out. We'll just do the, and so I'll tell you what the theoretical position is. It's looking at the development of the endogenous opioid system and whether neglect early on can pre-program someone to basically have hungrier receptors for substances later on, and that's been shown in mouse models. That's fine. We've got rodents to do that. But the idea is, can we, if you use external substances and it downregulates your system so that you're not producing your own, can you have enough interpersonal connection to re-up that so that you are beginning again to produce your own endogenous opioids, reducing the need for external drugs. That's basically the whole thing. That paragraph. If I could just get that paragraph somewhere, I'd be fine. But so we said, okay, let's just do it purely from that perspective, developmentally. So we tried the developmental version, not saying anything negative about medication, just biologically this. That didn't get published. Then we tried, let's just own it and let's compare and contrast such a developmental model and what would result from it, from continued medication and the pros and cons of it, including NAS and other kinds of negative or non-positive effects of medication. And that got axed. Then we went to a journal that said, are you having trouble getting controversial things published somewhere? Come to us, we will publish it. They would not publish it. so it could be bad. I don't know. I just want to get it reviewed, you know, except that that first group said it was okay to publish. But anyway, and so what we're going to try right now is open science. We're just going to put it on open science, invite people to tear it up. That's fine. So that is where we are. And so I have some ideas. Oh, I didn't even put up all my rejections. This is not all the rejections, but it's several of the rejections. We could just keep popping them up here. Nope. How often do you go to a conference and say how failure, you know, look at my failure together with me? But I wanted to kind of analyze the reasons for the rejection. So it could be that it really doesn't work. It really is bad. And that I am okay with. That's science. You try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Let's try it. It could be that it hasn't really been studied. And the thing that I've found is, and I have read the medication literature until I'm blue in the face, and everything I find is it is being compared to itself. It's like high dose, low dose, or the outcome is they stayed in treatment longer. Well, they're addicted to an opiate, so they're going to stay in treatment longer. You know, so it's kind of painful not to stay in treatment longer. So there's some competing interest there, but I haven't ever yet seen an article that truly compares medication to intense social support. That's all I want to do, is I want to look at this to see if there is a benefit of this. And so it could be that it hasn't actually been compared. And if it hasn't been compared, it needs to be compared. And then we'll know. And then if I lose, I walk away. That's okay. That's okay. I have answered my question. I just want to answer my question. But the problem with being able to do the comparisons, though, is that you need funding to do that. And those in favor of continued use of medication are much more likely to fund research than those without. It's just like there are not a lot of folks throwing money at, oh, please, you know, cure our people and we have no more patients. But that's what I want to do. So that's one of the issues with that. And then there's the purposefully concealing things, which I hate to go all the way to this nefarious end, but sometimes I feel like it is that. It's like we don't want that out there because we're making, I didn't mention the folks that the top 3 providers, at the time that I was looking at that several years ago when we had the top 3 providers, they were earning $44,000 a week. So there's like this huge, and now patient loads have been, it used to be that you could only have 100 patients, then you could have 275. Now there is no limit. You can have infinite number of patients, and you can see them on telemedicine and so forth. So it's like, I'm fighting against, I won't say fighting against, because I think there's a place for medication. I think it is a tool. It is absolutely a tool. I don't want to get rid of it. It saves people's lives, but I do want to help people have the autonomy to make choices between different kinds of treatment. So that's kind of where we are. And that's just cases of mine that I am familiar with. And that's probably happening to other people in other places where somebody's making a lot of money, you know, and I don't know what those are because I'm busy living in this one. But I am absolutely a purist when it comes to let's just do the science, review it objectively, and let the chips fall where they may, because I want to know truth. I'm a scientist. That's what I want to do. And so that sums that up. But I would love to hear, because I'm a lot of times in psychology arenas or addiction arenas, but this is quite a general audience. So I would love to have some chit chat. If you've got, I think I've got a couple minutes. Do you have a couple minutes? 1 minute. Okay, I got 1 minute. So there you go. You won.
All right. So I'm kind of a writer and recovering academic. So peer review as a being an argument, I guess I should also mention I'm a fellow at HXA. I've made this argument several times for years here at HXA and other places. The peer review does the exact opposite of what it's intended to do. Okay? And I want to kind of lay this argument out and then hear your response, because obviously it's pertinent. So ensure that things are factual and in line with tenure. It's supposed to ensure that you can do creative work. It actually does the opposite, right, on many levels. It ensures that people in power can prevent new ideas from coming about. And obviously the thing that's kind of underlaying what you've laid out in your experience, which I'm not even sure I heard, forgive me, I actually tried to go get the next room to turn whatever they were doing down. And it seems like there's an obvious element that even you're kind of tiptoeing around, which is there's a hell of a lot, an obscene amount of money going on behind the drug industries that are claiming to solve this problem. And
hence my target.
Right, and you can take the same issue to practically anything, surprising number of things. If you are going after the vested interests of your field, it doesn't matter if it's sociology or political science or anthropology. And vested interests can be defined very loosely, right? It can be defined as the people who fund the biggest foundation that gives the grants in your field, and you're doing something, whatever it may be, that provides those grants. So I just wanted to hear your response to my argument.
And her hand is up, but my time is up. So,
go ahead and give a quick response.
well, I just, yes, I think it's the money. I have gotten to where I follow the money on lots of, you don't think it's the money? Ooh.
No, so yeah, I just want to make a comment. I completely agree with you. The peer review process is massively broken. I can't say I'm a recovering academic, but I still have an academic affiliation. But it's not the money. So, I mean, I had an experience with a paper related to ketogenic diets that I sent to Nature Cell and then Journal Clinical Investigation, all of whom rejected it as being completely trivial. Finally got published in the American Journal of Physiology and now has 543 references. It is massively broken. The interests, no financial interests. In my area, the stuff gets rejected. It's more like I don't want the research. I don't think this is relevant. The editorial process. I do physiology and endocrinology. The editors don't know what they're talking about frequently. They can't make a critical decision. People, the papers have gotten monsters in my area. They've become like monsters. I still review papers and it takes forever. So I think money may be a factor for you. There's plenty of areas where it's not money.
Yeah.
And I gave up doing the high profile journals and started publishing in low profile journals and bioarchives because you can have a paper delayed by, you said 6 years. I didn't have anything that bad, but like 3 years and and the grant process is even worse if you're in an NIH running against. So I completely agree with you, but I don't think it's just money.
So we will continue the conversation after all three talks. So do we have, is Dan back? Oh, in the back. Okay, good. So our next presenter will be presenting about AI, campus culture, and peer review.
Yes. Thank you. First-time caller, long-time listener, that kind of thing. My name is Dan Coffing. I'm actually coming at this from the technology entrepreneurial side of the world. There was a series of trend lines that I saw developing a number of years ago, and I realized that once AI got here, it would be absolutely transformational to our epistemic commons, to the way we do thought processes, to the way we do critical review and things like that. So happy to just share a little bit of what we're doing. Academic peer review is certainly an area of interest to us, and would be glad to have the feedback, and certainly the same truth-seeking setup that we just had here. Having said all that, I should bring up my own slides. There we go, on with our scheduled programming. So this is another analysis of where the problem is. Humanity has a knowledge problem, and that is the deluge, the tsunami. I run out of flooding words to describe what's going on there. You can see there, and this is obviously just a crude, it's not mathematically tabulated, but one brain's capacity, we know how many neurons, we know how many data sets, et cetera, all possible research. You don't need to put research in there, all possible internet content, it doesn't matter. I think I saw one stat, I didn't put it on here, like 30,000 hours of YouTube content shows up every day. Like that's how fast your brain is falling behind. All of us know this in whatever knowledge setting we're working out of. We're just not keeping up with our own stuff, let alone the permutations, the counterpoints, and things like that. And this is a universal problem. Now, the reason I get at that, and obviously the fun diagram there of just I know my own stuff, Somebody gave me this at a think tank. I know nothing, you know a different nothing, as sort of like the ground level truth in all the manner of disagreements, the polarization, et cetera, et cetera. You can look at society as we're just getting farther and farther down our own little rabbit hole, our own little channel, and it takes such levels of effort to even pop our head out of the burrow every once in a while and go like, oh, yeah, there's a new idea, kind of thing. So this is a universal, overwhelming, psychological thing. The upshot is that humanity is both retreating into enclaves, which this organization is designed to combat, as well as into sort of echo chambers and little things that they know and overconfidence around those little things that they know. Now, the reason I get at this is not just the mathematical problem. You can't argue with this kind of math. It creates what I would call an n+1 exponential. Anybody know what that term is? It's a way of describing, if you and I don't know, I'm not saying you're bad, right? If you and I were sort of to deconflict, work out, I don't know, whatever controversy we might, that's one. And then you and I do it, and then you and I do it. That's n. Like, okay, it's just a multiple. How many people did I interact with? Now when they go, oh, now we got to deconflict, and now we have to deconflict, and now I'm deconflicting with them, that's the exponential. And the more people that come online, the more people content we produce, the more ways that ideas get circulated, the more that exponential just blows up. And it blows up in the scene level. So it's not just, oh, I can't keep up with what's out there. It's like, I'm not keeping up with the not keeping up kind of problem. So this is a fundamental dilemma, again, across our human institutions. Now, that'd be hopeless all by itself, and that's all pre-AI. This was going on before we got there. AI, at least, is going to give us this ray of hope in it, in the sense that it has, if we know anything about it, it has this infinite digestion, infinite analytical capability. And so what we're illustrating, and this is a software platform we built, is first, because I'm in the DC area, going after rhetorical mischief. Hedges, dodges, idioms, equivocations. We all know the things that sort of pass both in our journalism and in our political class. Those are easy things to flag right now if we just turn the cannon or turn the microscope onto those sort of things. We also know the summarization capability of AI. So in the face of the deluge, there is this opportunity. It's like, well, I can chop this down to bite size a little bit. So there's at least one ray of hope there. When it comes to peer review, we're now saying like, what else can I do here? And this is sort of a request from some publishers that I've been talking with. Like, let's go after assumption checking. Let's go after theory design fit. Let's go after method claim fit, et cetera, et cetera. Like all the things that make for a cognitive successful argument, the AIs can sort of like, I can start highlighting those things to you as surely as I can flag spelling or grammar. So that's a fascinating opportunity, but giving tools to one side of the equation and the other side, like there's some serious pain points. Like on the one hand, all of us are facing this infinite content problem. We're part of it. We're like, okay, look how fast I can produce this stuff. On the other hand, we're, in the ideal world, giving the reviewers this infinite analysis problem. And I realize some of us are on both sides of that desk. The thing that's still the pinch point in the middle is the human brain. So the poor, lowly human brain. And all of us, sort of in that pain. Again, if we were sort of trying to work through the deconfliction, we both are facing content overload. There's definitely always clarity issues. I had no idea you meant to turn it this way, et cetera, et cetera. We've all been in those kind of conversations. Cogency issues, critical review. And so our strategy was like, there's two things going on. One, the infinite AI capability, and how do you harness that? But also, like the real choke point, you can see it at the bottom, is the comparison of complex ideas. It's a how do I get two minds to converge on one thesis. And so that's a little bit how we went around designing our UX, or our user interface, to support this. Let me see if I can get this video to play, given the other tech challenges that we've had so far. Not yet.
Society relies on expert ideas, so shouldn't those ideas first be tested, compared, and validated? Such a model seems impossible. The fractured, noisy world has left everyone battling for trust and feeling overwhelmed. The frustration lies in the sheer volume and tangled narratives, where anyone can publish anything at any time. With an exponential flood of content, who can possibly keep up? The good news is the steps for testing out ideas are well understood. Great arguments require clarity, cogency, and critical review. This has long served courtrooms, academia, and the research community. The challenge lies in doing the deeper analysis at much higher scale. Our mission is to standardize this in-depth critique using OpenVetting.ai. Done well, everybody wins. The speaker is more effective, the critic considered, the audience engaged, and the stakeholder far more confidence in the ideas that survive. Here's an example between two experts. To anchor the dialogue, the host imports an article, bullet points, or a transcript. This can be done for discussion or pointed critique. Next, the AI outlines the core ideas and flags the weaker reasoning to help focus the remarks. Then the host invites interested parties to engage with the content and each other, including not just the author, but their colleagues, stakeholders, journalists, and supporters. Once they reply, the argument ledger builds out to the right as back and forth each team answers the other, specifically and in context, with the team leads approving the best remarks from their side. For deeper evidence, citation tracking is also available, along with audience reactions down to the argument level. Finally, it assembles activity and rating stats to help the hosts and sponsors optimize the experience. Reduce the errors and elevate the insights with OpenVetting.ai.
Amazing voice talent on there, wasn't it? Let me go back to our slides here.
That voice was AI generated, right?
It was not. Some people have started to recommend that. We'll see. So, a couple of details. Just a quick walkthrough. We start with a base level of content that we believe that the in-context markup is really important. So whatever that is, PDFs, research, transcripts is our next feature release. AI analysis, that one's sort of clear enough. And then you socialize it. That's one of the sort of the big leaps from current AI is all single player. And now we was like, no, why don't two people or multiple people work out the details on whatever this argumentation is in front of an AI? So the AI is not beholden to any one of them. It's trying to keep the conversation on topic, on thread. And lastly, the mapped expert replies. Now you saw that going back and forth. It can go, it's a variety of gameplay there. But the big thing is I call it a cognitive ledger. Chess masters can sort of keep track of the game inside their head and call out King 4 beats Queen 2. But we don't do that very well at all when it comes to reasoning, even on paper, let alone in the air or rhetoric and things like that. And so we're like, let's have everybody watch what claims are being answered, what claims are being split, how this all is being argued, what counterpoints are being made, et cetera, et cetera. And lastly, once you move into the internet world, there's all kinds of stats and metrics and things like that. The key shift here is we want to get people having like a very intentional, this is the best, most reasoned conversation of your life. And if that's peer review, exactly why and where this got excerpted, not just a few remarks at the bottom of the Word document or whatever the case might be. So that's the full cycle. I don't want to dig, we can do some Q&A on other features if that's of interest. I wanted to talk a little bit, up-level a little bit on both the HXA mission and sort of the larger epistemic commons. Ken Mill's truth vision scale, and I chuckle to myself how many times Brother Mill shows up in the HXA newsletter material. Like everybody's seen this picture and green and things like that. But I went and found one of the quotes I hadn't seen recently. It's only by the collision of adverse opinions that the truth has any data being supplied. That's sort of like our fundamental touchstone in free speech, in open discourse, in inquiry, and things like that. Like, please give me some way to bang these ideas off each other because that's how we're going to advance this game. Now, I'm going to go back to my N+1 scenario, and the answer is Ken Mill's truth vision scale, and the answer is heck no, not even close. It is so, the more ideas that are out there, it is so difficult to step by step work through idea by idea, person by person. Something's got to give here. We are already flooding ourselves. We've got to accelerate this. So that's why I make the point, it requires scalable and empowered critical review. And so we believe that Open Vetting is stepping into that domain. These same systemic failures, these are all familiar to us. Echo chambers, false certainty, oopsies, non-reproducibility, some domains harder than others, and certainly polarization. These are all ways in which we try and achieve Mill, but we're not doing it very well for our own human limitations. So we think that change, of course, is inside the way that we design this. To say, like, can you create the structure and the AI augment to guide users into their most difficult, most painstaking, most evidence, most substantiated point-by-point type of arguments? And I believe this is my last slide. Oh, a few other use cases for this. Obviously, this is discourse related. It's not just peer review. So we're actually opening conversations with the college debate teams. My original design for it was my think tank friends on both sides of the aisle regularly shadow box in DC. Like, if I had an opponent, I'd do this, I'd do that. And I was like, you have an opponent, let's make those things happen. So we see opportunities obviously in review, We see actually having a post-publishing engagement as a new model to say, I want my sophisticated audience to come give me intelligent interactions around this thing, around whatever the paper is. It's obviously useful for tracing out policy and getting at the truth there, and naturally debate. I started with that one. But the big thing is, when I hear things like, oh, it took 3 years, I took 6 years, as John Q. citizen, I was like, that's an obscenely slow process for human knowledge. That's horrid. You're not catching up with any but competitor, world competitor and that sort of thing. We've got to compress that scheme down. We've got to compress that down by scales, like 10, 100 times faster. And part of this gambit is like the fundamental, and I'll use an idiom that a think tank friend of mine gave me. He's like, I saw this position paper. I had 3 bullet points I wanted to make as a reply. Nobody will publish my 3 bullet points. So I have to fluff that 3 bullet points out to 1,000 words, get it published. You want to talk about making somebody angry. I wasn't going to get angry over your 3 counterpoints. Well, I will get angry over your 1,000 words and your life story and how your dog died and why this is all tied together. And so like the fundamental disagreements, the deconfliction here is at the idea level. It's not at the paper versus paper level. And so this is a gambit to say, can you drive discourse? Can you drive public thinking? Can you drive public controversy down to the idea level and help people get that deconfliction going much, much faster? Help us set a new standard for public trust. That's what we're doing in a variety of sectors. I'm the founder and inventor behind this. That's why I know it so much and I'm passionate about it. But do you want to take questions now or you want to wait till the end? I think we're good for time, but thank you very much.
The talk is titled, Does Diversity Increase, or you could say improve, scientific productivity? And I worked on this with 2 co-authors who I met through Heterodox, so it works. Okay, somebody swiped right. Sam Wilson, who's here at the conference, and Zach Patterson. Okay, so this project started with an experience that my colleague Zach had, where he was asked to be on a hiring committee, and he simply said that he would do it as long as he could hire based on merits alone, and he was swiftly ejected from that hiring committee. The science is settled, they say. Diversity improves science. And there are statements like this all over the place. Diversity within medical profession with respect to sex and racial minorities have been shown to have a positive effect on health. Diverse perspectives improve the quality of scholarly initiatives. And this one, achieving more equitable, diverse, and inclusive Canadian research enterprise is essential to creating the excellent, innovative, and impactful research. So, just so you don't think I'm cherry picking, I don't know, I'll pick more cherries, I guess, and show you a whole bunch of these. I don't know. You can find these type of statements all over the place. The idea is that diversity will improve your scientific impact. So the science is settled, or is it? And that's the kind of the thrust of my talk here. Often the claim is given with no evidence, just given as a dogma. Dogma, it's giving axiomatically. So diverse perspectives improve the quality of scholarly initiatives. Sometimes indirectly related research is provided as support, as in this opinion piece, where they essentially look at, constructed teams and how quickly can they accomplish a puzzle or something like that. And then many claims just appeal to a moral or an ethical code, and these often come from the business world. This comes from a McKinsey report that just we know intuitively that diversity matters. And so what was our approach to this? Our approach was a systematic literature review. And we then set out to establish what is in the literature regarding the impact of diversity on science. So our inclusion criteria, we went through this PCC process. I don't know if anybody's done something like this. It was my first time, and it's awful. But so the population was science researchers or scientific teams. The concept that we have was diversity, and the context was scientific or academic output or impact. So these had to be published, peer-reviewed, and empirical in this time range, 1973 till the present. So that's what we did, and I'm going to give you what's called a prisma diagram here. I don't know. So if you have done these, you might be familiar with what a prisma diagram is. But basically it shows you the steps that we've taken, and I'm going to go through these kind of one by one. The first is our search and our screening process. So the first thing for the searching was we used 3 databases and kind of looked for diminishing returns after the third one. Weren't really finding anything new. And that gave us 6,677 papers. That was a lot. And then we went through those, and it took 2 sets of eyes for each paper. We put yes, no, or maybe, kind of did they fall within our scope. And we screened out 6,160 of these. In this process, well, it wasn't fun. So what I did to make it as fun as I could was I picked out the papers that just struck me as being, in one way or another, funny. Or, I don't know, ridiculous. So we're going to play a game, if that's okay with you. It's a fill in the blank. Hopefully, so if you're easily offended, good, okay. All right, so this one is called The Power of Story, bringing 2S LGBTQ+ digital stories into some setting. Let's see. We all know that we need to bring 2S LGBTQ+ digital stories into many things. But if you were going to do a research project, what do you think goes in the blank?
Diverse.
Diverse settings. Any? Preschool settings would be good. You're just on the polar opposite side. It's actually gerontology. So just on the wrong end of things there. So that's good. We're having fun here. There's some laughter. Let's keep going. Just a few more. Okay. So now we're in the UK, inclusion, engagement, and digital lives. Now I'm going to get you started here because in the UK there are fans of things. What are they fans of in the UK? Soccer, thank you. And the experience of what type of soccer fans do we really want to? Yeah, so that's too broad. That's too broad. It's just the B. It's the B. It's the B. Okay. I know. So there's a follow-up, I guess, ready to happen if you want. You go for the 2S one, and you got yourself a paper. Okay, we're still having fun, I hope. Okay, we all know what a duo ethnography is, right? Yeah. So duo, I guess duo, I do know. Okay. So duo 2, so I'm going to give you the first one there. Male and female, straightforward enough. Okay, what other duos can we get? White and... Brown, way to go. That's very good. Okay. And then the last duo, any guesses?
Black and yellow.
Black and yellow? No. Mad and fat. Now, I'm a little disappointed. I mean, I expected that everybody had read this paper. And this one, just notice it has 132 downloads. Now, probably about 5 of those are from me downloading it a few times just for my study. But the sense that it's a duo ethnography of fat, I guess. I don't know.
Angry or mentally ill. Like this.
Okay, yeah. Well, okay, so I got one more, and then I'll get on to more substantive stuff, but I don't know. This is the fun part, I guess. Sex, gender, sexual orientation, and more. Sexual diversity in what kind of research? We need more sexual diversity in the research of? More specific?
Cancer.
No. It's not important there. It's important in Alzheimer's research, of course. All right. All right, so I don't know. Maybe these don't strike you as quite as absurd as they strike me, but these are the kind of papers that are... Yes?
Why is it soccer, not football?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to have to ask Rory Magrath that.
Rory McGrath is mad.
Mm-hmm. Mad and fat, probably. I don't know. Okay, so after we had those 6,000, we got down to 169 after our initial screening, and then we went into a full text screening and then excluded 65 more papers for various reasons outside of context or concept, so forth. So this led us to 104 papers that we have included in our study. And here are the number of papers by year. And perhaps this is of our 104 papers. You know, it's pretty much near zero until around 2015 where it skyrockets up. Of our 104 papers, the context that we were able to extract from them, and that is kind of the output. So what kind of output measures were these papers using in order to measure scientific productivity? Mainly it was publications and then citations, this idea of authorship, so first author, last author, that sort of thing. And what about the concept? So which forms of diversity were these papers looking at? And the majority of them were based on sex. We also then looked at what was a unit of analysis that were in these different research articles, and the majority of them were individuals, so the diversity of the individual, I guess, and then teams was next most prevalent. And I did want to mention on this next slide, we then broke it out because we were looking at scientific output broadly. My initial conception of this project was just STEM, but we expanded it out, and most of the literature, I guess the plurality was medicine. And one thing I noticed, this is kind of a tangential observation, but in the medical literature, and a lot of these dealt with sex, and they almost all gave some statement kind of like this, that gender, in this study, only the binary women and men were used. And a lot of times they apologize for this, that this procedure implements a binary gender system to remain consistent with most existing gender studies in science, which is not designed to address the important issue of non-binary gender distinctions. So even in our medical literature, there's this hesitancy to use male, female, binary, and if they do, they apologize for it. Okay, that's kind of separate from my overall thesis, but I thought it was interesting. So now we're going to extract the data from the 104 papers and our hypothesis, right, based on the statement that diversity is good for science, that diversity improves scientific output or impact. And then a result in what I'm going to show you here is just a reported finding from these papers that relates the concept of diversity to the context of scientific output. So we found from these papers 5 different result types. Hypothesis consistent results, and so I'm using as an example sex in publications. Gender diverse teams have higher acceptance rates. Okay, that would be a hypothesis consistent. Some gave us mixed results. Women published more in subdisciplines, men published more in others. An inverted U, this is apparently quite common in this type of literature, that a model will show increasing then decreasing impact of diversity. Neutral result, so the sexes had equal publication rates. And finally, hypothesis inconsistent results. Okay, men publish more than women publish. Okay. One thing we needed to keep an eye on was a lot of the results that we saw, or many of the papers, provide results without controlling for the reference population. So we called those not population adjusted. And so we had 104 papers. Out of those, 23 of them had results, but with no population adjustment. So I'm going to focus on the other 81, at least to start. Here's the big picture. Here's more or less the answer of what we found. Okay, so out of those 81 papers, there were 200 total results relating the concept to the context. And out of those, 200 total, 142 were population adjusted. And out of those, 114 were not consistent with the hypothesis, and that's 80%. And 28 were, and that's 20%. So that's my flow diagram version of things. You can break it out by all the different dimensions of diversity, and these come from 19. Anything that had a hypothesis consistent result came from 19 out of the 81 papers. Let me show you this in a different form with these bar graphs. And I try to color code it, so green means like good in a sense in terms of the hypothesis, and red would be against, and some gradations in between. And so the different concept, the different diversity categories, sex was the most that we found in the literature. So how would you slice this up? Let's say you really want the answer to be diversity improves scientific output. If you really want that to be, how are you going to interpret this data? Well, I call this the rosiest picture result. You would collapse these into two groups, possibly supporting a hypothesis. I'm going to put in anything that's inverted U, anything that's mixed results, anything that's clearly consistent. And in the other not supporting group, I'm going to put anything that's clearly inconsistent or neutral. And when you do that, when you collapse the data in that way, you get this. And so I'm going to show you the picture version of this. It looks like that. Where, I don't know, so if you look at, for instance, disciplinary diversity, that does actually seem to improve scientific output. Perhaps institution, get multiple institutions in there, and maybe your geographic location might help. Okay, I don't know if that's the best way to slice up the data. I think given the way that people make the claim that diversity improves science, there ought to be strong evidence. And so if you just look at what are the results that clearly support that statement, you get a chart that looks like this, which is what I'm calling the unambiguously consistent percentage. And I guess when I look at this, I would say the overall weight of the evidence that we found anyway points away from the hypothesis. Okay, so there's other ways to slice and dice the data, and we can look at this in terms of unit of analysis. So we had 200 total results. They were separated, most of the results based on individuals rather than teams. Out of those results, 4 showed a hypothesis consistent result. Teams, kind of a diverse team, 15, that's 37%. And others, so we're talking about like organizational, like diversity of organizations, I guess, 9 out of those. So the final piece that I want to show you is, maybe it's just the case that we got a bunch of papers and all of them are really crappy except for 1 or 2 which are really good. And those 1 or 2 definitely make the case. And so our approach to that is let's evaluate the quality of the papers the best we could. And we use this mixed methods appraisal tool for that. And this is a tool that addresses or assesses the quality of research studies. There's this rubric that you kind of go through. And well, what we did is we used an AI, okay, cool, to go through this rubric and give us an overall quality for these papers. And then what we did, so we kind of bin them into 4 categories: low quality, moderate, good, or high quality papers based on that rubric. And we had this percentage of each papers. And then just looking instead of at the number of papers, the number of results from those papers, that's our pie chart. So if I just take the high or the good quality papers, so I'm going to just focus on those, basically the result is the same. Okay, so these charts look overall very similar to our population adjusted charts. The rosiest picture version looks very similar. The unambiguously consistent version looks similar. So I think it's not really has much to do with the quality of the papers. Just the papers that we're getting, this is what we're seeing. So to summarize the results, I have this table for you. If you look at all of the results from all of the papers, you're getting 16% of the results which are consistent with this idea that diversity improves science. If I look at just the population adjusted results, it's 20%. If I look at the high or good quality papers, the results from those, it's 15%. So again, my big takeaway from this was that the overall weight of the evidence points away from this hypothesis. So the hypothesis was that diversity improves scientific output or impact. The conclusion is that the evidence from the scientific literature does not appear to support this hypothesis. And where we're going to go with this work, further analysis of the results. If you have any ideas of other ways that we can analyze these results, I'd be happy to hear those. Meta-analysis and then publish, hopefully. I have one more slide for you, and I don't know if you caught it in there or not. Here's the rosiest picture percentages, okay, and this is from our population adjusted result. And I wanted to show you the ones that were above 50% for supporting the hypothesis: nationality, discipline, institution, geography. So here's our research team. Good-looking group of guys. Australia, Canada, and the U.S. Management and marketing, engineering, and I'm in chemistry. And finally, 3 different institutions. So I'm going to make the claim today that this is the most diverse group at HXA. Okay. So I would like to, at this point, invite the other presenters up, and we have now plenty of time for Q&A. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have a comment on Dan and Andrea's presentations, because I think it applies to both of you, and that is I've been at this for 25 years. I am a biophysicist and study muscle contraction, and I have been dealing with gatekeepers my whole career. The problem I've been facing is that we know that physical chemistry applies to biological systems, but they don't like it. And so my science is really about as basic as it gets. It's really the mathematical foundation of science, and it has been rejected for the past 25 years. And it's math. It's easy to disprove it. It's easy to show this math isn't correct. But for 25 years, they refused to do it in defense, in this case, of an ideology. And so I know exactly what you're going through. And applicable to Dan is interesting, because I've actually done sort of the ChatGPT, loaded all of my work, loaded all of, sort of the Huxley 1957 models of muscle contraction, and asked ChatGPT which model is correct. And it consistently comes back with your model is correct.
Right.
Based on all these reasons.
That is, there's a latent problem there, as you know.
I know.
But like, if I can extend, like our model is a challenge-based thing. So, and this again, coming out of policy thing, is that I know that there's a counterpart on the other side who is shadowboxing, dodging this issue, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're like, can you visceralize reasoning, argumentation in such a way that suddenly it's an untenable path for them? And so whoever is the decision makers, could you A, challenge them, and then secondly, sort of like socialize it enough to start costing them brownie points for believing the wrong thing.
An interesting thing, though, to apply to your program, because the answer is pretty clear what the answer is.
Yes.
And, it's mathematical, and so it could be fun to do.
Well, one of the things, when I first read that you were going to be in this session, so we're just going to chat a minute, was that if AI, I was thinking AI is going to review, but the thing is, it's based on what is out there, and so if right isn't out there yet, it's going to be drawing on all these things unless it goes and vets every article that it's using to review. If gatekeeping has worked well enough, it doesn't have the information that it needs.
Let me clarify 2 things.
Yeah, okay.
One, we're going after an AI human teaming model.
Yeah.
So you're able to interject, hey, I don't think this claim space is covered, this is split, or what have you. The second thing is we're not using AI on a fact check basis as much as a reasoning excision.
Yeah.
We want to help just the reasoning flags, this, therefore, that, all that kind of thing, to go, hey everybody, this is the structure of the argument, here's the dependencies, here's the assumptions, here's the weaving and dodging, and do with it what you please. The AI is not calling that strike as much as going just black like this and say, help everybody see where like that kind of flaw is just latent and unavoidable.
Yeah, I was wondering
information we saw instead of the very labor-intensive work they have done, and congratulations on the fun you had. How would you approach it with all the tools you have to have a meta data analysis?
I'd probably first go with mission and like, who am I trying to convince with this? This is a friendly audience. Everybody loves what he's saying. There is somebody that is on the fence, is trying to make a decision, and so we would be interested in taking that content and sending them like, hey, can you find a flaw in this? Oh, yes, and we CC'd somebody else that you're trying to cater to. So we're doing two things. One, trying to create a gauntlet toss, if you will, and then sticking that intellectual gauntlet into the arenas where it has the chance to make the best force. Data. Like our interest is keeping the discussion on the rails more than assessing the data itself. So that's the way in which it creates persuasive effect, enclosure. I'll go so far as to say entrapment. There are people that would be aghast at what he just published, and we're like, cool, let's make it stick.
Let's go over here. Yeah, good.
I have a question for Daniel. So you mentioned that you are working with publishers. I'm wondering if they're aware to the extent that AI programs are being used in an unauthorized manner by reviewers already. What I'm curious about here is that I got a review recently, and one of the comments, it seemed like it was from an AI bot, because at first I thought it was a faculty member who had asked a grad student to do it, but then when I reflected further, I thought even a grad student would know that this is not appropriate.
Yep.
Credit a study
Yep.
and prevent it from going forward. So I'm wondering if publishers are aware that their individual reviewers are already using AI, and how can your process help make that more transparent and fair?
Good questions both. I'm sure there's no way not to be aware. Like there was just a university that published like, we know students are going to use AI up and down the stack. We might as well go with the wave rather than try to keep on fighting it. So I'm sure that's a given. Our gamut is again on that teaming thesis. It just say like, we want this to be two interlocutors, a reviewer and a submission, and colleagues. The more minds we can get at the consequences, I think that's the more useful it is. The upside of that is that somebody's putting their neck out. It's not just, well, the AI spoke from on high and thus it is. Somebody said, ooh, thank you AI, that was stupid. let me help you say what you were trying to say here, or flag what you were saying. So it's very much trying to put the user's reputation at stake, more than just the AI.
Question to you, Jordan. What is the definition of a diverse individual in the context of these studies?
That's a good question. That's something we struggle with as well. And the way that we have it here is any time, let me give you an example of something that would fall into this category, being labeled for our study as individual. Publication rates, we saw this a lot in the medical literature. Publication rates of men and women. And in that case, the unit of analysis was the individual. So how many publications did women have versus men have? And as a counterexample to that would be something that we put in as a unit of analysis as a team. We'd say, okay, chemistry department at this university has this many publications, and this university has this many publications, and then looking at the gender diversity within those teams.
Thanks, Jordan. From what I understand, you arrived at 16 high-quality studies that support diversity-improving science. Is that correct?
Yes, so we had, I guess I would have to, I didn't think about it along those lines, but there were, in terms of the quality of the studies, like based on our MMAT analysis, there were 34 high quality studies. And of those, then we had a total of, I don't have the exact numbers, but, oh, the summary slide, yes.
Yeah, it was 15%.
Percent.
16 hypothesis-consistent results of higher good quality.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, that's correct. And those are the results. And so there might be multiple results from one paper. Yeah.
So can you tell me about some of those results? Like, what's the best argument for this? Are there some good papers that make the case that diversity improves science?
Yeah, and so a lot of the arguments are something like, it's not so much arguments, a lot of these are models, and so they would take a certain journal, past 10 years, take all of the publications from that journal. I just go to the male-female thing because it's easiest to explain, and they'll code the author's gender based on their name, and then they might also code in, their nationality or other factors, and then they'll build a model out of it, and they'll model how many publications, and then they look at the coefficients on these and see if they're statistically significant. And so if you have a coefficient that, positive coefficient for the female, that would be a consistent result, that if you then had more females on your team, you would get more publications. So those are the types of things that we would see in the hypothesis consistent results. Yeah.
Your study is the time is like more than 40 years or something of papers.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a trend like these consistent ones? Are they more recent in time than the other ones, or are the good ones the data ones more recent in time, or less recent?
Yeah. No, that it's a good question, and it's not something we looked at yet, although we could. One thing we did notice, I guess, was, if you don't mind, I just go back here. Like this big uptick, it came a lot from these gender studies where it's every subdiscipline of any discipline we're going to do this same study for. And whether they were the high quality ones or not, I'm not sure where they fall in this timeline. But yeah, it's a good question.
Thank you all the presenters. I'd like to ask Andrea and Daniel, maybe you decide, how Andrea was talking about your paper being disregarded, not passing through peer review. You think this is more ideological. So how then your AI can help Andrea in this case?
I think we would say, my answer would be like on exposure. Like, first of all, the AI is going to help flag some of those core assumptions, maybe latent disagreements, anything that's sort of like, this is the fundamental truth-seeking line of the argumentation, and it's mapped in such a way that it's inescapable. And again, I'm going back to that challenge model. Once that's there, taking, let's say that's the study we just saw, then sending it and socializing it with the interested parties to say, like, okay, you're making this argument, tell me where the flaw is. So it's an intellectual gauntlet toss is really what it is.
And so does it also reduce the reviewer's biases as well?
We don't mind the review. We want more reviewers. We want more particular reviewing bias, or more reviewing participants, because they can counteract each other. So we're really trying to get at making salient points the most reasoned, disciplined arguments you've ever made in your life, kind of thing.
And if anybody has anybody published in Frontiers before, one of the things they use is an open review platform where you get the review, you can respond to the reviewer, the reviewer can change. And this went on again for a year we probably went through 5 reviewers and 2 editors, I think, in that time. So there was lots of what you're saying that the computers probably do a lot better, but there was a lot of that back and forth and cleaning it up, and the whole idea and the way they publish is to get good science out. So I felt really good at the yes, it's going to get in there point, but then it broke at a different level, and so I see that multiple folks working together to get this in shape to be published makes great sense, and ideologically I love it, but it's just like those competing interests.
Thank you.
So I'll throw out maybe a wild idea, but I don't care. So is there really good evidence that peer review actually results in better work? So one of the biggest difference between writing academic work, obviously not just with academic editors and professional editors, but certainly with peer reviews. It's like when you're writing professional work, the editors are always there to try to make it better, right? They're always there to try to make it better, try to make it easier, try to help you streamline the process, how to make the writing more clear, et cetera, et cetera. And when I was like a naive young graduate student, this is what I thought on some level peer review was. Not a bunch of old codgers writing ridiculous notes trying to dismiss things that might have in any way endangered their take on something or their funders or whatever else. Like the toxicity of this process is obscene. And well, I think like this AI version that you're working on, it sounds really interesting. Concern is at some point we might devolve into the same process.
Somebody
Right?
may co-opt
do
your
you
AI.
have or I mean, it's already a reflection of the existing process, which has a lot of toxicity built into it. But it strikes me that anything can be gamed, right? I mean, anything can be gamed. There's no way you can create some kind of system or bureaucracy that's impossible to game. And so, like, what are you doing to?
Well, I would say two things. I made the point about trying to move from these episodic 5-year cycles to get papers or ideas out there.
Yeah.
To say, like, can we squeeze that down? Can we create more incremental thresholds either for interaction, for publishing or post-publishing interaction with the content on a knowledge development thing? So like that's high-level model one. The second thing is like, yes, anything in the abstract binary can be gamed, but if you can chop off 25% of the gaming because now it's getting called out, or now they're up against this Socrates level critic, like that seems like advancing humanity. So it feels like maybe it's an incremental problem, but you and I having a debate maybe right now with a Supreme Court justice, not pick which one, saying like, no, Dan, you're overstating there, or what have you, all of a sudden we're both going to be straightening up, we're going to get a few things flagged, there's a few punches we're going to leave in our pocket. Like that's the gambit, is to do rhetorical sunlight on the entire process.
Can I ask a follow-up? In terms of your model, I'm assuming that you're still abiding by blind review and all this. So these people, the people doing
that makes a lot of sense for certain uses. We're still hunting around for like which publisher adopts it and where do they put us into their process. Our platform is designed to support a whole array of discussions, and if you want to anonymize names or don't, it doesn't matter.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah, it's an option.
So just a question, does social media have a role in bypassing gatekeepers and helping in this process? Is there any success in that area? That anybody's aware of?
I'm not good at social media, so I haven't done it well, but I have seen people that said, what the heck, I'm just going to go ahead and put it out there, which I think open science theoretically can do that. It's like it gets out there and at least people can see it. And one of the reasons we want to do that is just so we can say, here it is, just read it and let it stand for itself, because if nobody sees it, nobody can critique it, make it better, But so you could do that. It's a very different audience on social media, and I was just in the session at 8:30 of the guys that were tarred and feathered at their institutions. I also got canceled a couple of years ago. That's a whole different story. So yeah, there's that as well. It depends on who sees it, and people that don't know much then can toss it under the bus, and it loses all hope of influencing anything if the wrong person disagrees with it well, publicly and non-scientifically, which is why I try to stay in the scientific community for it. But yeah, so risks.
Just a quick question for Dan. So I understand the scope of what you're using your tool for. Would you comment on potential role of AI to improve this review process by looking at the empirical or the evidentiary basis of the research, looking for data fraud, excessive p-hacking, other things like that?
Certainly. I mean, the sky's the limit in terms of what AI can do. Our focus has been on getting the human interlocutors, what they review on their own exercise to bring to that conversation. More power to them.
You aware of anybody building tools for that?
I'm not aware of names I could say right now, but she mentioned the unauthorized review process. Like, there's no way it's not going on with incumbent things. It just sort of like is still, I make the distinction, it's still single user. I do my thing with the AI, and then I turn around and I drop it into all the traditional channels, and we're like, can we mash those two things together?
And it seems wonderful but scary at the same time, because what if somebody misunderstands your paper, but it gets flagged as this, that, you know, and it's like, then you spend the rest of your time defending that thing that wasn't real. You know, I don't know. Yeah, it's a good bad. It's like behaving in front of traffic cameras to me. You know, it's just
Other questions? Okay, I think we did it. All right. Thank you all for attending the symposium.